Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. Got some red areas colored in here. Eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat area. That's a winter storm warning for heavy snow for tonight into tomorrow. For up to a foot of snow expected to fall there, with winds gusting possibly as high as 30-35 miles an hour. So that'll create some low visibilities and possibly near whiteout conditions in some areas. There's also a blizzard warning out for tonight through tomorrow for the Klondike Highway up to White Pass. Looking for at least 11 inches of snow there, with winds gusting to 60 miles an hour. So that will create whiteout conditions there, again, later tonight and continuing through tomorrow, possibly into tomorrow evening. Otherwise, down to the south, Juneau, Admiralty Island areas, winter weather advisories, not so bad in the conditions there. Still could pick up 4 to 7 inches of snow and gusty winds. Visibilities could be down to less than a half mile at times there. There's also a winter weather advisory out here for the Kenai Peninsula, and winds gusting 30 miles an hour create blowing snow along the Sterling Highway. Visibility get down to about a half mile there, with anywhere from 4 to 7 inches of snow falling across the peninsula. Of course, amounts, as they usually are, will be quite varied and variable. Susitna Valley, especially the western Susitna Valley, looking at a winter weather advisory for heavy snow there. Anywhere from 8 to 12 inches expected to fall by Monday. Midday Monday, I believe, was the timing on that. And the Alaska Range, eastern central Alaska Range, winter weather advisory there, gusty winds and snow coming in later tonight and through tomorrow and tomorrow night. They're creating the same type of conditions, but not as bad as in the blizzard or winter storm warning areas here. And then Bristol Bay, northward there, gusts 45 miles an hour, anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of snow, give or take here, across this entire area with the winds, and again, creating the low visibilities there and blowing snow. Same thing, St. Lawrence Island and the coastal area, south coast, which includes Nome, White Mountain, all the way up to Wales and Tin City, also under a winter weather advisory. Farther to the north, nothing out. Anchorage, no winter weather advisory for snow, but still looking at anywhere from 5 to 7 inches falling beginning tonight. A good shot comes in tonight and then might taper off a little tomorrow, and then another shot tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. And by Monday morning, you could have 5 to 7 additional inches here in the Anchorage area. And areas to the north, no warnings or advisories out all the way to the Arctic coast. Here's a storm, very intense storm, bringing winds anywhere from 50 to 75 miles an hour in gusts here from Atka Island eastward into the Alaska Peninsula. Winds gusting upwards of 70 miles an hour this afternoon at Cold Bay. Temperature rose to 52 degrees in the warm air associated with this storm this afternoon, and near 50 over the eastern Aleutians. Break right through here behind the front, and then winds really pick up again. Gusts 70 miles an hour out Coon Island. Nikolsky, about the same thing. Unalaska, 45 to 50 mile an hour gusts are kind of protected at the observation site there. They don't, when it's southwest, usually don't get as strong as other areas there due to the terrain. Farther back to the west, rain and snow over Adak, nearly half an inch fell today, water equivalent, and then colder air back towards Shemya and snow there. Fair over the northern interior there, still some westerly flow aloft, the Arctic jet there, and you can see impulses of moisture, batch of clouds here, one kicking off across the Mackenzie River Delta, next one bringing areas of light snow, flurries, fog to the central east side there, actually extending all the way back to Wainwright today, and then yet another one upstream there, can't really tell, really nothing too strong. All the big action down here to the south with this storm. Showers still hanging on, but tapering off over the Panhandle today, having a hard time ending completely, but you'll become under the influence of this next storm, and that'll shut them off tonight for sure. You can see tight gradient around this 962 millibar low pulling into the southeast Bering Sea, kind of tracking north-northeastward, and snow and blowing snow developing along the southwest coast. 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts, Cape Newinam up to Tooksuk Bay, anywhere from 25 to 45 miles an hour so far into the interior there, up across the Yukon Delta. Winds on the increase, Seward Peninsula, and we'll see again the warm front here. Snow, Kodiak, change to rain tonight or any time now, and then as the cold air comes back in, you'll start to see those snowfall levels drop back down towards sea level, but whatever falls at sea level overnight tonight, even for the Alaska Peninsula, will be pretty wet and probably mixed with rain at times. Otherwise, you can see gale force winds and precipitation move into the Panhandle, snow in the north, extreme north, and then rain to the south with southerly winds. First, one impulse of moisture pushes some snow. Looks like trying to cross the Alaska Range there, probably will, into the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country for some light snow there. Heavier snow, blowing snow with the winter storm warnings, blizzard warnings out here for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, lower Yukon River Valley areas. And again, wind, snow, blowing snow of the Pribilofs and snow showers there along the Aleutians. And the eastern Arctic coast, still looking at a threat of some light snow there with fair conditions in between. Moving on to the outlook for tomorrow. One system drives into the Yukon here. The front kind of drags back across the Panhandle. Good southwest flow. Wind, rain, heavy at times there for much of the Panhandle. Still looking at snow up over the northern areas and mostly snow along the North Gulf Coast after possibly becoming mixed at times, but it should stay cold enough here for snow across all of southern Alaska. Heavy at times in the upslope areas there. Again, kind of coming through in impulses. There's the next one coming through about this position tomorrow afternoon, actually the parent low here. Weakening, but holding together well enough to bring moderate amounts of snow Bristol Bay on up into the across all of southern Alaska here over the next couple of days. Cold front, Arctic front trailing out to the Pribilof. Still looking at snow showers, but winds lighter. Very windy but dry conditions. Clear skies, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, up into the North Slope, and this system exiting there, but still some flurries for Barter Island. And moving on to the first, or for Monday, clearing out here in the west, and again, kind of a drop in the temperatures. Wind's not all that bad, pretty slack gradient there, but staying out of the north. Persistent low over the central Aleutians, very cold air in over the Bering Sea and south of the Aleutians there. But wind's not too bad, clearing out for the Pribilofs, below freezing for your highs. And snow showers pretty numerous from the Fox Islands to periods of snow out to the west. Low pressure gradually into Prince William Sound. Snow eastern interior, especially the southeast interior, slowly ending Cook Inlet, Matanuska Valley, and stays wet over the Panhandle with that front kind of stalled out, or actually another one. Wave develops here, tracks northeastward with some moderate heavy precipitation moving into the southern areas. Lows for tonight, still well below zero in the north, anywhere from 25 to 35 below in the northeast. Milder teens to lower 20s here to upper 20s Bristol Bay, mid-30s Kodiak, in the 30s for the Panhandle, followed by highs tomorrow in the 40s southeast coast, lower 40s Kodiak, near 40 North Gulf Coast. Below zero northern interior, 0 to 15 above in the central interior, and lower 30s south central Alaska, followed by lows in the 20s. And Monday afternoon highs, upper 20s south central Alaska, below zero on the Arctic coast and North Slope.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather, first graphic Sunday morning showing a big band of IFR here across the southern Bering Sea, right on up into the southwest coast here, that southwest flow, and then eastward across southern Alaska. All Cook Inlet right up to the Alaska Range, some marginal VFR spilling over the mountains there, and then an area IFR up here a little farther to the north, near or just south of Eagle. VFR, northern interior, marginal VFR, Arctic coast, some areas of IFR, those passing weak disturbances. We got IFR right in across the Panhandle from the Gulf of Alaska for the afternoon. Improvement here for the Panhandle, going marginal in the afternoon, some IFR lingering over toward Stewart and Hyder. IFR not quite as extensive here along the North Gulf Coast, but still in the Coast Range, back into the Talkeetnas, Thompson Pass, Kenai Peninsula, IFR, Matanuska Valley, IFR. Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, maybe some improvement to marginal in the afternoon, and then with the IFR along and west of the Alaska Range here, Kuskokwim Valley IFR, right into the Yukon, or the Kuskokwim Delta here, and then IFR extending northeast, more IFR, central eastern North Slope and Arctic coast, improving here probably quite rapidly, especially late in the afternoon back along the Yukon Delta coast, northern Bering Sea becoming VFR. Marginal VFR, Pribilofs right on the edge of the VFR though, and then marginal out over the Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, and even better over the Fox Islands. Then back into the IFR here for Unmak and Unalaska Island for Monday, and another patch there farther to the west, west of Adak. VFR here, higher pressure along the southwest coast, northern Bering Sea, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, trying to push into the Kuskokwim Valley. And IFR, though, right along the western Alaska Range, northern Kuskokwim Valley, and across the Tanana Valley over to the eastern interior, 40-mile country, areas of IFR even in the Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, eastern North Gulf Coast, though, but most of Prince William Sound looks marginal, improving to VFR, but some more marginal conditions slipping up across southern Kodiak Island. Mostly marginal there for the Panhandle, some VFR showing up Prince of Wales Island. And for Monday afternoon, marginal VFR, IFR over toward the eastern border, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, into northeast Prince William Sound, Valdez area with marginal VFR hanging back to the west here, northern Cook Inlet, Madawaska-Susitna Valley, up and across eastern interior, some IFR. Looks like along and north of the Alaska Range there, upper Tanana Valley. VFR here from the Arctic coast right on down all the way into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, VFR. Narrow band IFR there, Bering Strait, Shishmaref northward, just catching Point Hope, Cape Lisburne. And then some more VFR here, northern Bering. Good day for the Pribilofs, VFR, marginal VFR. Most of the Aleutians, for the most part there, so not too bad for Monday afternoon. And for passes, Anatuvik and Anigan look to be VFR, or will be VFR through the day tomorrow. And Lake Clark and Merrow, though, at some point in the day, it's going to be IFR for both passes there. Pretty fast-moving southwest flow, surges of moisture, lowest conditions on the western entrances of both passes. That same forecast good for rainy and windy, mostly IFR. Isabel, IFR at times, and Mentasta a little bit better. Marginal VFR, chance of IFR southern entrance. Tanita, IFR. Portage, IFR, becoming marginal in the afternoon, some improvement there, especially on the east side, Passage Canal. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR, freezing levels, area of warming coming up into the Gulf of Alaska, with that whole thing shifting eastward there, approaching the Panhandle, and back down at the surface, now coming south of the Pribilofs once again. Icing, heaviest here into the Panhandle with the jet shifting southward there, so areas of considerable moderate rime icing across the southeast coast about Yakutat, and maybe even here along the Aleutian and western Alaska range, lightening up as you head west and north. Jet stream, upper trough swinging in, the cold upper low there coming down with the trough into the interior, kind of linking up with the one out here in the Pacific. Good southwest flow as that swings through. Lots of moisture with that, strongest into the Panhandle. 9,000 feet, 50 to 60 knot west-southwesterlies here, and 55 to 65 knots there, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, as this low tracks eastward and weakens. And 3,000 feet about the same, but winds a little lighter. Turbulence-wise, moderate chop, pretty widespread, south central Alaska Kodiak, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, and the Panhandle.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the Sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the Sun doesn't stay at the Sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted, from causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane, about 30-45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button, it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button, it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system's going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, where the strong southerly winds are up into Bristol Bay and right up through here. Of course, ice will be pulling northward or is retreating in response to that. Back to the west, coming around back to the north, and that will, as the low pulls eastward, get back to northerly winds even here into Bristol Bay. So looking at tomorrow, into tomorrow evening, the southward push of the ice here, maybe 20, 30 nautical miles, and then after that, the northerly winds stay but become much lighter. So the ice edge will continue to track southward or build southward, but at a much slower rate. Coastal water forecast, southeast coast tomorrow. Much of the coastline, small craft advisory, southwest winds 30 knots, seas around 15 feet. Good gales here on the north coast and eastern North Gulf Coast, out of the east at 40 knots, southerly 40 knots there for Lynn Canal, 8-foot seas. Gales for Stevens Passage out of the southwest. Clarence Strait south 30 knots, seas 7 feet. And for Monday, winds come down, but still pretty brisk along the coast out of the west, 30 knots, seas near 20 feet. The entire stretch of the coastline come down to 30 knots for Lynn Canal out of the south. Small craft advisories for Stevens Passage, southerlies 25 knots, and Clarence Strait south at 20. North Gulf Coast, east side, 35 to 40 knot winds here, mostly out of the southwest around Middleton Island. 40 knot southwest winds, western North Gulf Coast. Barren Island, same forecast, 20-foot seas. Kamishak Bay, southwest 40 knots. Southern Cook Inlet, gale warnings, south at 35, but only 15 knots north of the Forelands, and southerlies at 20 knots, 6-foot seas. Prince William Sound, southwest 20 for the Sound on Monday, but seas down to 3 feet. And then southwest 30 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast. West side gales at 35. Same thing for the Barren Islands. Westerly gales 35 knots. West 40 knots, Kamishak Bay. Southern Cook Inlet, west 25, and north of the Forelands, light southwest breeze at 10. Storm warnings, Shelikof Strait, Bristol Bay, Sitkinak, all the way down to Cape Sarachev, and the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, where there'll be 55 knots out of the southwest, 33-foot seas. Otherwise, southwest 50 knots, and just under storm force here on the east side of Kodiak Island, with seas around 25 feet. And then westerlies 30 knots, Kodiak Island for Monday. And 25 knot winds on down to Castle Cape, and then northwest 20 for the Alaska Peninsula. So much lighter winds in store for Monday here, both for the peninsula and Bristol Bay. Fox Islands, southwest 40 to 55 knots. So good gales and storm warnings out there, especially north of Unalaska Island. Seas 25 to 31 feet. And southwest 30, 35. Central Aleutians turn west 35, and then north 25 from Kiska to Shemya. And for the outlook on Monday, small craft advisories here, western Aleutians, northerlies 25 to 30 knots, strongest Kiska to Amchitka, Adak and Atka, central Aleutians. North side, northeast at 20. South side, Pacific side, south at 20 with 12-foot seas. Much lighter winds coming in the forecast here for the eastern Aleutians on Monday. West 10 to 20 on Alaska Island, Unamac Island, southwest 15 to 20 knots. And storm warnings on the southwest coast here for 50-knot winds on the along the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Gales for the Yukon Delta coast, 30-knot winds St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, northwest 25 for the Pribilofs. And Monday, northwest 20, St. Lawrence Island, lighter winds, comparatively just a breeze now, 15 to 20 knots out of the northwest, and 15-knot winds for the northern Bering Sea, as well as the Pribilofs out of the north, seas at about 5 to 7 feet. Beaufort Sea, central and east side, northeast 15 tomorrow, lighter northeast breeze on the west side, and Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, 15-knot winds, and then brisk wind advisory Cape Thompson to Wales. And the outlook for Monday, northwest 10 to 15 here from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, and then variable to southeast at 10 on the west side, light easterly winds on the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast through Monday into Monday evening. For tonight again, blizzard and winter storm warnings out for the southwest interior, winter weather advisories just about everywhere else here across southern Alaska. Back into the winter storm warning for the North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, and also for the Klondike Highway, a blizzard warning out tonight through tomorrow for snow and whiteout conditions. Better conditions up north and staying rather cold. Then tomorrow, dry up to the north. All the action here across southern Alaska with a lot of snow coming in just about all areas here, milder with rain over the southern panhandle. That continues into Monday, but improving here over the interior. That's all I've got time for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.